Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce, the part-time prospector, and I want to talk to you today about how to choose your first gold prospecting metal detector. I want to talk about the metal detector here. We're chasing gold nuggets, not mineral sand or anything like that. But we're chasing gold nuggets, and primarily in Australia. The rules basically apply around the world. I usually get asked a lot, what's a good metal detector to start with? And it's a bit like asking, how long is a piece of string? All I can definitely say is twice as long as half. I don't know what the answer is because there's a whole bunch of other questions I have to ask you. Major one is, how much money do you have and where do you intend to go prospecting? That's a difficult one to say. So where do you intend to go gold prospecting? If you're going to go prospecting in areas where soil mineralization is low, then you've got a whole different suite of metal detectors that you can tap into. If you're going to prospect in locations where soil mineralization is high, then your choice just shrinks considerably. Okay. So what do I mean by soil mineralization? Australia is a very, very old continent. Some of the oldest geology in the world can be found right here in Australia. Australia wasn't really hammered by the glaciers during the last ice ages. A couple of places were, but generally none of the continent was touched by glaciers. So it means that the soil on the surface of the earth here is old. Many other parts of the world, the soil profile they're dealing with, especially in North America and Europe and places like that, the glaciers stripped away all that's gone. And what is left over is new generated stuff. The stuff that's left over in Australia is old. We're talking millions and millions and millions of years old. And one of the few minerals that remains in the soil is iron. And there's no surprise that Australia is one of the biggest exporters of iron ore in the world. So this mineralization in the soil can be so high that if you take a magnet, and I wish I had an example, I took some video of it 2 trips ago and I can't find the video footage again. If you take a magnet and just drop it on the ground and pick it up again, there's just like rocks and sand and everything just stuck to the magnet. It's just instantaneous like that. And it shows that the iron concentration and I'm talking WA here and parts of South Australia, definitely parts of the NT, and the iron concentrations are very, very high in the soil. So what this means is that if you've got a detector that is not suitable for high iron mineralization and you try to detect on it, it's just going to give you a signal basically everywhere. It'll just be, they call it so noisy that you won't be able to tell what a good signal is or what it's not. And you'll really struggle to separate the two. Basically, within a few minutes, you're just giving up because your ears are overloaded. In other parts of Australia, primarily east coast of Australia, there's chunks of the east coast, not all, but some, is actually quite low soil mineralization. And so these metal detectors that are not set up for the high mineralization can actually work very well in those areas. So it comes down to, where are you going to go gold prospecting? There's basically two types of metal detectors that you can get here in Australia, pretty much basically around the world. There's a VLF, very low frequency metal detectors, and PR, phase induction metal detectors. VLF detectors have been around for basically for ages. They are very good machines when you're working in low soil mineralization zones. They are the perfect machine to take on the beach and go chasing relics and that sort of stuff. They have phenomenal discriminatory powers in it, as a discriminatory in a good way. So they can tell you if something is ferrous, non-ferrous, aluminium, gold, or whatever like that. So they've got a little gauge, it flips back and forth, or a number or whatever like that on the metal detector. And that is a really handy feature when you're metal detecting. The advantage of these two VLFs is that compared to PI machines, as a phase induction, they are cheap, they're quite lightweight, and they're easy to use. Pretty much grab it, turn the button, away you go. No real learning curve, super easy. Anybody can use one. Good examples of these sort of machines that are floating around at the moment that you can buy would be the Equinox 800, 900, and I think there might be a new version. The Gold Monster 1000. There's a Fisher machine, which I can't remember the top of my head what it is, and there's a few floating around that are very good machines and generally cost under the 1,000 mark or 1,000 and a bit or something like that, but they're pretty good machines for what they're good at. When you start flipping over into the PI stuff, you go into a different game. These machines are considerably more expensive. They are a lot more difficult to learn, but the advantage of them is they can punch right through the mineralization in the soil, and they can find deep gold buried in highly mineralized soil. So in places like Western Australia, as parts of SA and the NT, these are the most commonly used machines by people chasing gold in those areas, because these have the ability to hammer right through the soil. So even those places where I was telling you about where you can put place a magnet on the ground and it just tracks all the dirt, the metal detector will see right through it, and it'll easily pick up 0.01, 0.02 grams of gold, which is basically the tiniest little speck. And if you haven't got good glasses, the eyes, or you've left your glasses behind, you're going to struggle to even see that tiny speck, but the machine will pick it up. So these are very powerful machines. They are powerful. They are great at discriminating the gas. Sorry, Greg. They're pretty average when it comes to discriminating, and in my personal opinion, they're not worth the effort to go into discriminatory mode and just dig everything, basically. So they're great on mineralization, they're great on deeper targets, and but the downsides are they're way more costly than the VLF machines. They're generally much more heavier, and they do have a slightly steeper learning curve. So good machines that fall into this category are most of the MineLab GPX series, 5,000, 6,000, the GPZ 7,000, fantastic machine. There's a couple others floating around, and there's the newer one that was very recently in the last, since the beginning of this year, there was the Algo Force E1500. Now, I haven't used that machine. I'd love to get my hands on one and have a go, but it's the bottom end of the price range, looks lightweight. It looks pretty slick, actually. So that's the question it comes down to. Where you're going to detect will govern which type of detector you buy. So the next one obviously comes down to how much money you got to spend. Okay, so if you've got $500, well, guess what? You're not buying a phase induction or PI metal detector. They generally start around about the 2,000 mark and rapidly increase upwards to 10,000 or more. And what you're getting at the 10,000 mark is the bee's knees, basically, of machines. It does everything except make coffee and toast, basically. So these are great machines, but you pay a premium for them because they can work in these highly mineralized soils. The nice thing about many of these metal detectors is that you can change the coils in and out. So big coils are generally used to punch deep in the soil and look for bigger, deeper nuggets. Smaller coils are super sensitive for tiny specks close to the surface. And there's a sort of combination between them. Now, there's different types of windings and everything else like that, which you can get in many a prospector will end up with a range of metal detector coils sitting in their bag waiting to use, depending on conditions. Some are great when there's EMI interferences in the air, things like there's a thunderstorm on the horizon and it forms, what do you call it, interference, and makes false signals. So you swap coils and get a better response out of that one. Smaller coils, say, are good for poking amongst tree roots, amongst bigger stones, and for finding super tiny bits of gold. So what I would suggest, if you're looking for a metal detector, is think about the area, think about how much dollars you've got to spend, because there is this fallacy of buying cheap, and sometimes you end up buying more than once. And so at the end of the day, you didn't actually save any money. You actually spent more money than you started with. I personally fell into that game, into that thing. When I started off, I bought the Goldmaster 1000. I was based here in Perth. I bought it secondhand. It was a great price. I saw it on, I think it was Gumtree or was it Facebook Marketplace? Can't remember. The guy had used it a couple of times on the beach, and that, but basically what it is. I bought it thinking that I could take, primarily I was going to go beach hunting and then a little bit of gold, but I've swapped the other way around now. Bought the Goldmaster 1000, took it out into the bush for the first time, and it was basically unworkable. I couldn't even get it to make it. It was like beep all over the place. I fiddled every control that was possible, and there's not a lot of fiddling to do with that monster. So it was basically unworkable for me. So that sort of came home and went back in the cupboard. A lot more saving of the dosh, talking very nicely to the Minister of Finance and War, the wife, and eventually managed to get the money to buy the next, which I bought at 5,000. And since that, I moved on to the 6,000 because the 5,000 was heavier and had the arms and that sort of stuff. But anyway, 5,000 is still a very, very good machine. So don't buy cheap. You'll end up buying more than end up spending too much money. What I would suggest is have a look, find out what sort of detector you really, and keep an eye open for secondhand metal detectors. Now, if you don't know what type of metal detector to get, because there is a big range and they do cost a lot of money, so what I would strongly suggest is go down to your local metal detector shop and hire one for your next trip. Maybe hire 2 or 3, depending on how much money you got. They're not that expensive to hire, especially if you're taking it for a couple of days or a week or whatever it is. And take them out in the bush. You get a bit of training with each one as well, and give it a go. Give it a go. See what runs. Some will just fit you like a glove, and others will be like a foot in a glove. They don't work with you. So find out which one's good, and then come back and say, I know I want to detect A and C are my preferred machines, and then start looking for a secondhand machine. Now, they always do pop up on things like Gumtree, Facebook, a good place. There's people sometimes go metal detecting and they do it 3 or 4 times. They don't find anything. And then so they ask stuff this, I'm gone. And I'll try and get some of my money back. And I'm going to go now and chase some salmon down in the south coast of WA. So they do something different. So they get rid of the metal detector's lucky if it's got any red dirt on it. So it's still worthwhile. So try and chase up the second-hand metal detector. If you want the warranty and that sort of stuff, obviously you'd have to go new, but it's worthwhile looking for those range of detectors. Find out what you want. Then once you've figured out the metal detector, the game, that's only part of the puzzle. Just because you bought a good metal detector does not mean that you will find gold the next time you go out. Okay. That's the next phase of your education starts. You've got to start thinking like gold. Where is gold? Where is it? Where am I likely to find it? And then once you've identified those locations, then you can go to those locations. Now, just because you find a fantastic looking location does not mean you'll find gold, because someone else might have been there before you and cleaned all the gold out. So you've just got to keep working and working and working, and eventually it'll start to come good, and then you'll be on the money. So I hope this video has been of some help to people. So if you have found any value in this, I'd love it if you give me a like, a comment, and even subscribe. That would be fantastic. And guys, I'll see you on the the next video.